Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to JK's Tech Lab. Today, we're going to take a look at adding Google as an identity provider in Azure AD. This could be useful if, say, you're inviting guest users that aren't a part of your organization or something like that, and you want them to be able to log in with Google instead of having to create an Azure AD account. So, yeah, I have there's some documentation that you can follow just so you can kind of see the steps that I'm doing as I'm doing it. But right now, first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just add an external guest user and show you what the process would look like for that guest user if they're not set up to use Google as an identity provider. So first, I'm gonna just go to let's go to users, and I'm just add this guest user. So I'll click on add new guest user, and what I want to do is say invite a user, and I'm gonna just put in their email address. So I just have a basic little test Gmail account that I use for stuff like this. So you could put a message in there if this was a real person here. And let's say invite. So it says they're inviting the user. If we do a refresh, and again, I'm just doing this in my dev environment. So we can see right here, we see it's a guest. So I should get an email at this email address. I have this in another browser, so let me pull that up. Actually, let me show you what this looks like so you can see. So when you get that email from Azure, you can see the message, and then you get accept invitation and stuff like that. So I'm gonna just copy that link and open it up in just so you can kind of see the process. So this is what it looks like. It's saying create an account. Now remember, I haven't set up Google as an identity provider yet. So this is what it would look like if I was just inviting this guest user without having them authenticate through Google. So you can see it's telling me to create an account. If I would click next, it's going to have me create a password. So basically, this is actually creating a password in Azure AD instead of using Google as my identity provider. So we don't want to do that. So you saw that. So next, what we really need to do is set up this identity provider. So to do that, you want to go to where it says external identities in your Azure AD, and you can see all identity providers. And you can see Google, Facebook, you can do SAML, but this one is going to be Google. So, and you see we need a client ID and a client secret. So we need to go over to our actual Google developer account to do that. So let's go over here. And I don't have any projects yet, so I create these and delete them just to kind of mess around with stuff. But again, if you were going to be setting this up, you would have a project name. So let's just create one, and let's call it. And you can see I've done this before, just to see how it works. Yeah, let's do that. So we'll call it Azure IDP, and I'm gonna click create. And then once you do this, we have to actually go in and create the API. So we need to be able to get the client and all that stuff. So we're going to go over here to API and services. And the first thing we want to do is the OAuth consent screen. This is, what pops up when you're trying to authenticate with OAuth and stuff like that. So it's going to be external. We're going to say create. And we're going to have to do names and everything. So app name, let's just call it. Just keep it the same. I'll use my own support email. I don't need a logo, no homepage or anything like that. So authorized domains for this one is Microsoft, but again, just so you can see, right, we would be at this step right here. So it's going to be Microsoft Online as the authorized domain. So I'm going to add that. Developer email address, I'm going to just put my own dev. Again, this is just a little test one, but it's what it is. And if you were going through setting up scopes and everything like that, you could do that here. But what we really need to do is go create our credentials. So I'm gonna go over to my credentials. I'm gonna click create, and we need OAuth client ID. So go in here, and I'm gonna name everything the same just because I think it makes more sense. So this is a web application, and again, I'm gonna name it Azure AD IDP. And then you're going to need your specific URIs. You get these from, so if we weren't using Azure AD, if you're using something else, then you would get those URIs from whatever platform you're using. As we can see in Azure AD, our URIs are here. So we need to put in these, and then this one we have to put in with our actual tenant ID and stuff like that. So let's add those in. It's going to be this one. And I actually, when I did this, I didn't do all three of these. So even though their documentation says this, I just did it with two. So I did this one, and then I added this second one right here. So let's go. But I'll go ahead and add all three because their documentation says it. So then I need my tenant ID. So I'll go back over to my dev tenant and find the tenant ID real quick. And like I said, for me, when I'm going through and just kind of showing the process for these and setting them up, I'm not doing this. It's not a production situation, so I just usually go through, set this stuff up, but delete it. But yeah, just like going through the process. So we got that one, and then we have one more, which says this one. Like I said, for me, I didn't, when I set it up before, I didn't use all three of these, but it's fine. Copy your tenant ID, put it in there. Oh, they want the tenant name on that one. Yeah, see, I didn't use this one before. Let's see if it works, because I didn't have to do that before. So when I set it up on my own previously. Anyway, so I'm just going to put those two in there because that's how I did it before and it worked. So let's go create. And now we got a client ID, client secret. So we'll go back over to external identities, all identity providers, Google, and it wants the ID and the secret. So there's my ID for this one. Put that in. We need the secret. Copy that over. And this is, like I said, if I just figured it's cool to show stuff like this because if you're interested in IAM and this type of work, then this is the type of stuff that you'll be doing. You know, lots of integrations and stuff. And we'll get into some. I'll probably do some stuff where I show you kind of how to set up some SAML connections and things like that as well. But connecting IDPs is a huge part of your integration. So we got that. It's there. So we're good now. Now we have Google set up as an IDP, so we should be able to authenticate with Google. So let's see what that looks like. I'm gonna copy that link again and put it in a incognito window. All right, so now you're seeing, instead of having me go through Azure and create a password, it's actually logging me into Google. So it's using Google to get my information. Gotta put in my password here. And then it's gonna, we're gonna have to give consent. So now it's saying these are the permissions we're gonna have. And you can see right here, since I didn't set up a privacy statement, there would be a link there if you had one set up. But since this is a dev, environment, I don't have one set up for it. But yeah, this is the process. Now this user would just accept to give access. And if we had given this user access to any apps, they would see that. Since there's no apps or anything that have been set up for this user, it's just going to go to a blank apps page. And since I have the security defaults turned on, it's requesting MFA. I'm gonna just skip it for this user because I'm getting ready to delete it anyway. What you see, we would go into these applications. That's pretty much it. If I had apps that I had actually shared, like if I was really inviting this user to my tenant to share and use applications, whatever applications they had access to would show up on this page. But now they didn't have to create a password. They just had to actually log into their Google account because we set up Google as an identity provider inside of Azure AD. So hopefully this gives you an idea of how you can use, external identity providers with your Azure AD. It just makes it a little bit easier if you're inviting guest users and things like that, or you don't want to have them directly set up, Microsoft accounts, or maybe they don't have an Azure AD account, or you don't want to have them worry about setting up passwords and stuff like that. This lets them use the passwords that they already know, and it just creates that trust between Azure and Google. So if you got any questions, let me know. Till next time, see y'all later. Peace.